Alright, today we're going to take a look at how to make numbers, and a lot of people ask this question and kind of wonder how I do it. If you go in and you get like an actual screenshot of the car or like a layout, you can go and cut and paste that over into another file. What I usually do is Control C, Control V, or Control Shift V. Control Shift V will make a new image and it'll paste it in there. So you just have to go to Image and then rotate it counterclockwise or clockwise, whichever way to get it facing the right way. So the first thing you're going to do, you might need to resize or scale it. So go up to the top into Image, and you want to set the image size to something like 700 pixels tall, something way larger. Now what I'm going in and doing here, and I know I'm going to be a little bit off in what I'm talking about because I'm watching the video. This is an old video that I had and I just wanted to redo it with my voice or with the new microphone I had. Is you're going to go up and you're going to reach up in the ruler up above or off the side of this in order to set your guidelines. And what the guidelines do is when you start to do this, you start to lay out these paths, they can actually snap to it, and that's an option that you can set. I believe it is in the select or edit tab, one of the two, and it says like snap to guides. You can turn it off if it bothers you, but I like to use it to get definite spots and make sure it snaps to the same spot. And we'll get into it in a moment, but lay it out on pretty much every flat surface that you could possibly have in your image, or even at like the min max type of stuff. So the inside of the 9 or the inside of the 8, you go there. And also I put them at the corners of like the 8 so that you can have it snap to exactly the same spot in order to keep it relatively symmetrical on either side. So what I went in there and I grabbed a color that I could use, and I'm going to start laying out the path. So when you bring up your path section, it is I believe it is B as the shortcut to get the path selector there. You're going to want to make new layers above this basic guide layer that I usually call them. I usually call them guides, so that's like what I'm following. And I made the layer extend a little bit further above and below the 9 and the 8, just so you have enough room for your outlines. So what you're going to do, like I have off to the side, I have like 3 layers there. And with those 3 layers, you can have your inner, your outer, and you can also make the shadow. And you can make them separate layers so that you can color them individually and not just have it all as one merged image. And it makes it really good. So if you wanted to use this number over and over and over and over, you can do that, and you can easily color change. The first thing that I need to do is get the path tool up. E brings up the path tool. It's the hotkey to get the path tool up. And you're going to use all those flat guidelines that are there. I didn't put them on the verticals because there's no really sharp corners. The only ones you could really use the verticals on would be something like, I don't know, if you wanted to get perfect located corners on like the 9 or like at the 8 where it cuts in about halfway. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to start laying out the path. So if you click, it'll lay a vertex, and if you click and hold and drag, it'll put the tail on it. So in order to make smooth transitions, you're going to want to click and hold. Every time I click, I drag it out, and that'll make it so you can drag out the tail. If you get to a point where you lay a vertices and you want to adjust this tail, you would have to grab the tail and then hold shift, and it will make it adjust the length on either side. Otherwise you could potentially have an instance where it doesn't make a smooth transition, but it will kind of curve up to a point, and then it will jut out a different way because it's only adjusting one side of that tail. Now, one thing to keep in mind that's very, very, very important is when you're trying to make these smooth transitions, you don't want to overextend, because if you overextend, it will make a weird bulge. It can make awkward outlines, things like that. So you notice how all the tails are always just barely below like the min-max guideline of what's reaching. If you notice where the tail goes in the other one, it would have been just short of where the line is going to end up. So you don't overextend and make a weird like over and back type of pattern. So you get out to about the min-max, you're going to use that for your curve, and it's very, very similar all the way around. So that was an instance where I laid that corner, and I used the path to extend out, right, and then I grabbed just the tail. I didn't hold shift, and I was able to adjust the tail to make a very, very sharp corner. Really good for the inner portions of these types of things. And the reason that you want to do the inner first is because when you start to do the outlining, you can use the same path in order to create a very, very equal outline all the way around, and you're not trying to, eyeball it. And the way to connect the paths at the end, and we'll show it again here very shortly. Notice how the tails don't overextend. In order to get the paths to connect at the very end, you're going to hold control that you hold in order to get the tails to meet up. And it just creates a little plus button. Click on that vertices and it will make a connection. And once you have one inside of the other, it will actually make, it'll have that hole cut out in the 9. The 8 will be very, very similar. You'll do all the way around the outside, and then you'll come back inside and you'll cut out the center section for the 8, for those holes in the 8. But it all works very, very similar. And once you get the hang of how to control the paths and how to make it symmetrical on both sides, like holding shift and holding, if you have to do shift or if you have to do control or whatever it is, the hotkeys make it very, very easy. And so hopefully you have not just glossed over this or jumped past these points. I was pretty close to being overextended. And a lot of times you'll notice it when you lay your first layer. So you just have to go Control Z, go edit that small little portion because you've already got the rest of the line laid out, and it shouldn't be too bad. And if you ever have to get your paths back, over on the right hand side above where the layers are listed, it says layers, and it also should say paths if you don't have that. If you click the little arrow in the kind of half box next to layers and paths, it'll give you like an options list of which toolbars you can add. So if you don't have that toolbar, probably a good spot for it. And then once you have that center section, you should have the inner portion laid out really exactly how you need it. There is far few between that I end up having a number that I have to go back and edit, other than like when I had the snap to guides issue on. Every once in a while, if you click it, it doesn't click exactly on the spot, so it might place it just a little far off, and then it tries to basically extend the tail, so you'll end up with like a weird, maybe it doesn't connect or it rounds a certain portion that you didn't want rounded. But that's the first thing to look at is, oh, did I maybe make, try to make a curve transition without realizing it. So here we go. You're going to go in with your path and you're going to fill. First you're going to fill, and that gets your inner portion. Then you're going to look, turn off the guide and see where it's at. But you want the guide on so you can make your next one. Using the same path, go back in. You're going to want to fill it just for ease of color change later. You're going to go down and you're going to stroke. And it's going to be kind of hit or miss. You're going to try to line it up with where your guide says to. See, that one's just a little bit too big. So you Control Z, go back, turn it down a little bit. Pretty close, maybe still a little bit too big. Turn it down just a little bit more. That's pretty good. Maybe a little bit higher, but you can fine tune that. And it's just Control Z, do it again. Control Z, do it again. Just to fine tune it. Once you've got that, you need to make that that shadow. Now, there's a couple different ways you can do this. You could use the drop shadow function, or you can just copy, paste, and drag, or you can use a long shadow, and all of those are going to be in like the filters, which is under filters, light and shadow. There's going to be down at the bottom, there's drop shadow and long shadow, and drop shadow and long shadow are both super useful. The problem with drop shadow is that it will round the corner. So if you were to just make the inner portion and try to use drop shadow, you would end up with a rounded corner at like the edge of the 9, where you want to keep it sharp. But once you have that, you're pretty good to go. And there was a little gap in the guide behind, so that's why I left that little gap between the 9 and the 8. But once you get through that, that should be all you need. Really, if you've got other suggestions for videos, please reach out in the comments. Otherwise, good luck, happy painting, and make all the numbers that you possibly can.